In the desolate depths of a forgotten world, the Ogryn known as Grolk advanced through fields of ruins and debris. His massive frame and gray skin were distinctive amid the barren landscapes of the 41st millennium. Grolk was part of a squad of Ogryns in the service of the Imperium, assigned to reconnaissance missions in war-torn and heresy-contaminated territories. Their task was to investigate a mysterious region known as the Necros Sector, where the shadows of corruption and chaos stretched over every inch of ground. Reports spoke of unsettling visions and strange presences dancing among the ruins, and Grolk and his squad were sent to uncover the truth. As they traversed a field of rubble, Grolk felt a shiver down his spine. The shadows seemed to come to life, twisting and undulating among the carcasses of old buildings. The ground seemed to breathe with a dark presence, as if the planet itself were saturated with malevolence. The Ogryn squad moved cautiously, the unstable ground beneath their massive war boots. The silence was broken only by the thud of their steps and the wind's hiss through the ruins. Yet Grolk did not feel at ease. His senses, honed by life in the darkest trenches of the Imperium, picked up the subtle whisper of voices in the air. In the distance, among the remains of an ancient temple, a faint light illuminated the darkness. Grolk, followed by his comrades, headed toward that uncertain light. As they approached, the shadows seemed to pulsate, as if the very fabric of reality were distorted in that accursed place. Inside the temple, Grolk was faced with a macabre scene. The walls were adorned with arcane symbols, and the floor was covered with strange drawings. In the center of the room, a hooded figure held an open book, its pages burned and inscribed with dark runes. The figure turned slowly towards Grolk, revealing glowing eyes devoid of pupils. The voices in the air intensified, creating a chorus of wails and infernal laughter. Grolk tried to comprehend what was happening, but the dark presence was already seizing the minds of his companions. Their expressions changed from confusion to fear, and finally to sheer madness. The squad leader, an Ogryn named Gurnash, approached the open book as if hypnotized. The hooded figure began chanting in an ancient language, and the burned runes started to glow with a sinister light. Grolk tried to stop Gurnash, but his comrade turned with vacant eyes and seized Grolk's neck with superhuman strength. The struggle was brief, but intense. With a desperate scream, Grolk managed to free himself from Gurnash's grip. He looked into his friend's eyes, but there was nothing human left in those sockets. Gurnash joined the chorus of malevolent voices, and the hooded figure laughed as corruption spread among the Ogryns. Grolk, wounded but determined, retreated from the temple. He understood that he had to find a way out of that damned place before it was too late. As he fled through the field of ruins, the shadows seemed to pursue him, tearing fragments of reality and turning the ground around him into a dark labyrinth. In the heart of the night, Grolk reached the perimeter of the Necros Sector. He looked back only once, seeing the temple disappear into the distorted shadows. His squad was lost victims of the dark forces that infested that forgotten planet. As Grolk moved away, the wind still carried the whisper of damned voices. The Necros Sector remained a forbidden place, shrouded in darkness and plagued by corruption. Grolk's story became a legend among the Imperium's Ogryns, a warning of how even the strongest warriors could fall victim to the dark influences of the 41st millennium. On the desolate battlefield of Kellyan Fifth, where the air was thick with the acrid stench of war and the remnants of fallen soldiers painted the ground, a regiment of Ratling snipers silently lurked. These diminutive sharpshooters, known for their unparalleled marksmanship, were often underestimated by their foes, But the true horror of the Ratlings lay in the unseen terrors they brought from the shadows. Under the command of Sergeant Grizzletooth, a grizzled veteran with a reputation for ruthless efficiency, the Ratling snipers infiltrated the ruins of an ancient city that had become the focal point of the war. Their cloaked figures blended seamlessly with the shadows, and their nimble movements betrayed nothing of their presence. As night fell over Kellyan Forf, the Ratlings set up their concealed positions among the rubble of shattered buildings. Grizzletooth, his eyes gleaming with the predatory focus of a seasoned hunter, surveyed the battlefield through the scope of his long-last rifle. The distant echoes of war, the distant rumble of artillery, and the faint moans of the wounded created an eerie symphony that set the stage for the Ratling's unseen terror. The first shot rang out, a high-velocity round that punched through the skull of an enemy officer. The Ratling's rifles barked in unison, each shot finding its mark with surgical precision. The enemy, bewildered and terror-stricken, sought cover, unaware that their every move was being watched by the Ratlings from the hidden perches. But the horror of the Ratlings was not confined to their lethal accuracy. As the night wore on, the fallen soldiers began to rise from the battlefield. The Ratlings, with their keen eyes, observed the macabre spectacle unfolding below. The corpses, reanimated by some unseen force, clawed their way back to a twisted semblance of life. Sergeant Grizzletooth, ever the pragmatist, realized that the risen dead could become a weapon of terror more potent than any rifle. In whispered tones, he ordered his Ratlings to modify their ammunition. Each shot was now tainted with a toxin that induced paralysis, rendering the reanimated corpses dormant once more. As the Ratlings continued their relentless barrage of sniper fire, the paralyzed undead littered the battlefield. The enemy, already demoralized by the precise strikes of the Ratlings, now faced an additional horror, the corpses of their fallen comrades twitching in a grotesque dance of death. The Ratlings reveled in the unseen terror they had unleashed. Grizzletooth, his cunning mind always seeking an advantage, realized that the psychological impact of their actions was as devastating as the physical toll. The enemy, besieged by both the living and the undead, began to fracture under the weight of fear. But the horror did not end there. As the night deepened, the Ratlings noticed a peculiar phenomenon. Shadows, elongated and distorted, seemed to detach themselves from the ruined buildings. These shadowy entities, drawn by the death and despair that clung to the battlefield, slithered towards the Ratling snipers. Grizzletooth, his weathered face etched with a mixture of wariness and curiosity, observed the shadowy specters encircling their positions. The Ratlings, masters of concealment, were not easily taken by surprise, but the shadow entities moved with an otherworldly grace that defied their mortal understanding. The first Ratling to succumb to the shadows let out a scream that echoed through the ruins. His comrades, their nerves frayed by the unseen terror, turned to witness the horrifying sight. The fallen Ratling's body contorted and twisted as the shadows enveloped him, leaving behind only an empty cloak and a whispered lament on the wind. Grizzletooth, realizing the magnitude of the threat, barked orders for the Ratlings to focus their fire on the encroaching shadows. The night erupted into a dazzling display of last fire, each shot an attempt to repel the ethereal menace. But the shadows, undeterred, closed in on the Ratlings with an inexorable inevitability. As the Ratlings fought valiantly, one by one, they succumbed to the shadows. Grizzletooth, the last remaining sniper, stood alone amidst the swirling darkness. The shadows, now coalescing into a humanoid form, confronted him. Grizzletooth, undeterred by fear, aimed his rifle at the shadowy entity. The entity spoke, its voice a sinister whisper that echoed in the recesses of Grizzletooth's mind. "You have disrupted the natural order, little hunter. The shadows hunger for balance, and you have tipped the scales." In a final act of defiance, Grizzletooth pulled the trigger. The shot pierced the shadow entity, dispersing its form into tendrils of darkness. But the victory was short-lived, for the shadows clung to Grizzletooth, enveloping him in an ethereal shroud. The Ratlings, once unseen terrors of the battlefield, had become victims of an even greater horror. As the shadows dissipated, leaving behind an empty cloak swaying in the night breeze, the ruins of Kellyan Fifi stood as a testament to the unseen terrors that lurked in the shadows of war. The battlefield, now devoid of the rattling snipers, echoed with the distant cries of the undead and the haunting whispers of the shadows. The ruins, haunted by the unseen horrors, stood as a grim reminder that, in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, even the most skilled hunters could become prey to the unseen terrors that lurked beyond the veil of mortal understanding. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, amidst the sprawling hive cities and war-torn battlefields of the Imperium of Man, there existed a forsaken world known only as Vodar Prime. Veiled in perpetual darkness and shrouded in the whispers of ancient curses, this desolate planet was home to a dark secret that lurked beneath its barren surface. Deep within the bowels of Vodar Prime lay the abandoned mines of the Corvian Dominion, once a thriving hub of industry and commerce now reduced to a labyrinth of forgotten tunnels and crumbling infrastructure. It was here, in the depths of the abandoned mines, that an insatiable evil had taken root, a curse that had long plagued the planet and its unfortunate inhabitants. Among those who dwelled in the shadows of the cursed mines were the Ogryns, brutish Abhumans whose immense strength and resilience made them prized assets in the armies of the Imperium. But even they were not immune to the malevolent influence that pervaded the air of Vodar Prime, for the curse of flesh knew no bounds. It began with whispers in the dark, barely perceptible murmurs that echoed through the tunnels like the faintest of whispers. At first, the Ogryns paid them little heed, dismissing them as the imaginings of overactive minds. But as the days turned to weeks and the whispers grew louder, they could no longer ignore the sinister presence that lurked in the shadows. Soon, strange occurrences began to plague the mines. Tools and equipment would vanish without a trace. Eerie noises would echo through the tunnels in the dead of night, and shadowy figures would flit through the darkness just beyond the reach of torchlight. The Ogryns, once stalwart defenders of the mines, found themselves gripped by a creeping sense of unease as the curse tightened its grip on their souls. As the curse spread like a malignant cancer, consuming all in its path, the Ogryns realized that they were facing a force beyond their comprehension, a darkness that hungered for their flesh and sought to claim their very souls. Desperate to break free from the curse's grasp, they turned to the only ones who might have the power to save them, the mysterious psykers known as the Sisters of Silence. Led by the enigmatic Sister Superior Seraphina, the Sisters of Silence descended into the depths of the cursed mines, their psychic nullification abilities shielding them from the malevolent influence that permeated the air. With their psychic powers amplified by the presence of the curse, they sought to uncover the source of the evil that plagued Vodar Prime and put an end to its reign of terror once and for all. But as they delved deeper into the darkness, they soon realized that they were not alone in the cursed mines. Something ancient and malevolent lurked in the shadows, a twisted manifestation of the curse itself that hungered for their destruction. With each step they took, the darkness closed in around them, threatening to consume them whole. As the Sisters of Silence pressed forward, they encountered horrors beyond imagining. Monstrous creatures spawned from the darkest depths of the warp, twisted abominations that bore little resemblance to anything of the mortal realm. With every encounter, their resolve was tested, their faith in the Emperor's light wavering in the face of such unrelenting evil. But even in the face of insurmountable odds, the Sisters of Silence refused to yield. With Sister Superior Seraphina at their helm, they fought on, their psychic powers lashing out against the darkness with unyielding fury. As they reached the heart of the cursed mines, they uncovered the source of the evil that had plagued Vodar Prime for so long, a malevolent entity known only as the Harbinger of Flesh. Born from the darkest recesses of the warp, the Harbinger of Flesh hungered for the souls of the living, its insatiable appetite driving it to consume all in its path. With its tendrils of darkness reaching out to ensnare them, the Sisters of Silence prepared for one final battle, a battle that would determine the fate of Vodar Prime and all who dwelled upon its cursed soil. In a clash of psychic energies that shook the very foundations of the mines, the Sisters of Silence faced off against the Harbinger of Flesh, their powers locked in a deadly struggle for supremacy. With each blow they struck, the darkness retreated, its hold on the cursed mines weakening with every passing moment. And as the last echoes of the battle faded into the darkness, the curse of flesh was finally lifted from Vodar Prime, its malevolent influence banished from the world forever. With the threat of the Harbinger of Flesh vanquished, the Ogryns emerged from the depths of the mines, their spirits renewed and their souls cleansed of the taint of darkness. But as they looked out upon the desolate landscape of Vodar Prime, they knew that their struggle was far from over. For in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there were always more horrors waiting to be uncovered, more curses waiting to be broken, and more battles waiting to be fought. And as they prepared to face the challenges that lay ahead, they did so with the knowledge that they would never again be alone in the darkness, for the light of the Emperor would always shine bright, guiding them through even the darkest of nights.